one, so I'm just going through Russell Barkley's very good analyses where he debunks the sort of neurodiversity paradigm, trying to make ADHD in this case, but obviously this can also be related to autism as well, trying to make it all like positive and showing how the studies do not bear this out. So we're now looking, so I just talked about the inverted U shape, the inverted U when it comes to ADHD symptoms and creativity, which I thought was very interesting really, because it shows that, and this can be, I think this can be applied to other disorders as well, it shows that an elevated trait that's not pathological might have a positive relationship with some particular attribute, such as creativity, when it's slightly higher than normal. So the person does not have a disorder, they just have a trait that's slightly higher than normal. It's not causing them any problems, but that trait, when it's slightly higher than normal, might be an advantage. They do not have a disorder. That's very clear. They do not have a condition. They're not diagnosed with anything. They just have a trait that's slightly higher than normal. It might be the same with certain autistic-like traits, like someone who's a bit more focused on detail than normal. That could be an advantage, because just slightly higher than normal. When it enters the pathological range, when it's like extreme, that stops being an advantage. And when it becomes extremely pathological, yeah, you're in deep shit. Okay, so ADHD, and it's kind of like the Goldilocks range, I guess. You know, you want to stay in the Goldilocks range. You do not want it to be extreme and you have a disorder. It's no good then. Now, ADHD and entrepreneurship, this is what Russell Barkley has to say on that. So, the question again, a bit like with creativity, is what exactly do we mean by entrepreneurship? Because there are many different definitions of entrepreneurship, just like there are many different definitions for creativity. There's a kind of more broader definition of entrepreneurship, and there's a narrower version of entrepreneurship. So, one definition, which is quite broad, is an entrepreneur. It's a person who organises and operates a business, taking on a greater than normal financial risks in order to do so. Self-employment, for example, landscapers, gardeners, might all come under that definition of an entrepreneur. And there's some evidence, Russell Barkley says, showing people with ADHD are more likely to be self-employed. There is evidence to back that up. But people in the industry talk about a much broader definition of entrepreneurship, not merely self-employed. As entrepreneurship also involves innovation and creativity. You have to create a firm to realise an idea. That's the broader definition of entrepreneurship. It's not merely self-employment. But to many people, entrepreneurship is just being self-employed. So it really does depend what definition of entrepreneurship you're using. There are 10 characteristics of successful entrepreneurs. This is from Kelsey Miller, Harvard Business School 2020. Number 1, curiosity. Number 2, structured experimentation. Number 3, adaptability. Number 4, decisiveness. Number 5, team building. Number 6, risk tolerance. Number 7, comfortable with failure. Number 8, persistence. Number 9, innovation. Number 10, long-term focus. So the factors likely to be involved are having some ADHD symptoms versus having the clinical disorder. So that's how do you define ADHD. So not only do we have this problem of how do we define entrepreneurship, how do we define creativity, but how do we define ADHD? Are we going by just rating scales, or are we going by actual clinically confirmed diagnosis disorder? Which types of ADHD symptoms are most prominent? For example, disinhibition, impulsivity, versus say more inattentive. Having more education For example, college-educated samples are used a lot. So they're not representative. Being of above average intelligence. Many people with ADHD don't finish college, so again, these samples are not representative. Extent to which the job involves team building, the extent to which team building and cooperation are necessary, because that could potentially result in conflict if you have ADHD. Comorbidity with other disorders and non-ADHD traits, that's a predictor of failure. Now, elevated symptoms of ADHD are associated with entrepreneurial intention. But, as Russell Barkley says, you need to find out the rate of business failure. It's all very well having the intention, but how successful are they? ADHD results in more conflict in business. So he says there does seem to be a significant relationship between having higher than typical ADHD symptoms and becoming self-employed. Not entrepreneur, just the very limited definition of being self-employed. But it also predicts earning less income. Was it a self-chosen passion or a necessity due to poor employment history with others? Because people with ADHD are more likely to quit jobs impulsively, they're more likely to be fired, they're more likely to change jobs more often. So, while high ADHD symptoms may mean one is more likely to select into self-employment, it's also a predictor of business failure. Having high symptoms is associated with being 70% more likely to have entrepreneurial intentions. But these studies are college-enrolled, not clinically referred samples. Hyperactive and impulsive symptoms are related to entrepreneurial intentions, while degree of inattention is related to failure to follow through and a failure of the business. It's also mediated by IQ, personality, education, whether have disorder or just symptoms. So mainstream media articles declaring those with ADHD to be more likely to be entrepreneurs are not supported by the current evidence. It's an oversimplification. Just as association with creativity is an oversimplification and a meaningless stereotype that is not supported by the evidence. And as scientists, we like to look at the evidence, don't we? And again, likely to be an inverted U-shape going on here. And he talks about Anna Abraham, 2014, Frontiers in Psychology. So in other words, once higher symptoms, not disorder, might result in a slightly greater increase of originality vis-a-vis normal, but once you get into pathological territory, the degree of originality goes back down to normal, and once it becomes extremely pathological, extremely disordered, you start to see a decrease in originality. As you'd expect, the more impaired someone is, the less able they are to be original, because they've got a severe mental disorder going on. It's not exactly conducive to freeing up the brain, is it? Let's face it. Yeah. Okay, so I'm actually going to stop there. I think I've got to the end of what I want to talk about. And I'll come back another time. So thank you for watching.